Well, welcome back to the shop, everybody. We're in the shop today because it's muddy outside, and we are going to get a little time here on the Bronco. And what we're working on today is blocking out the primer. We've already got the hood done and the doors done. We'll go over the fine details of that here in a little bit. We're going to show you basically our guide coat process and long blocking. If you remember from the first couple of videos, this tailgate, although it's in really good shape as far as rust wise, the top from here up was pretty beat up. I mean, this thing's pushing 40 years old, so it's to be expected. There was a lot of mud in it previously from the paint job before this, so we took out a lot of Bondo and we worked the metal out so we don't have as much mud in it. Same thing with this area down here where the emblems were. They pounded all this down and filled it full of mud, so we took all that out, and then we worked the metal back up, and then we did a couple skim coats to get that straightened out. And again, this section here, like I talked about earlier in the other videos, this is going to get the freewheeling package, so this is basically a big sticker all the way through the center here. So we're just going for smooth and shiny on this part, and our goal is to make from here up look good. Same thing on the doors. Where we're at right now, so we did all our body work already with 80 grit, and then we blocked, and once we were happy with that, then we sanded all the 80 grit scratches out with 180 grit, and then we DA'd everything out with 320 grit to get rid of all those scratches. And then we went through, we obviously broke through a lot of the paint and went down to metal. So we started the process with 2 coats of epoxy primer, and then I got 3 coats of fill primer on top of the epoxy primer. The reason for that is a fill primer doesn't really do anything to protect the bare metal, so that's where the epoxy comes into play at, and it kind of seals it up. But the epoxy is a non-sanding primer, which means it's not meant to be sanded. It kind of stays, it'll gum your paper up. So basically it's meant to just be top coated with either paint or primer or sealer, whatever. But what I do is a couple coats of epoxy to seal up the metal, especially down in these areas here where we're down to bare metal. Plus I sanded out the entire inside of the tailgate and the doors and everything. So it's going to have a nice finish on when it's done. So we got 2 coats of epoxy on all the bare metal and all the bodywork area, and then 3 coats of fill primer. And then we just a light coating of, this is just guide coat, and I'll show you that in a second here. So this here is the guide coat that I use. There's a few different variations of it. This is the aerosol one, and then there's a powder one that you literally rub it on the surface. This is from SEM. It's a 38203 guide coat black. It's not black spray paint, so don't just, you can, in a pinch, I've done it, use a flat black spray paint, but if it does plug the paper up when you sand, you cannot use a gloss black or like a Rust-Oleum or something like that. It will plug the paper up all day, and it'll take you forever to get through this. So this stuff's a little pricey for what it is, but everything's pretty pricey these days, so I guess that doesn't really matter. So we're going to get these fenders guide coated, and why those are flashing off with this, with the guide coat, which only takes a couple minutes to flash. And then we're going to get blocking out this tailgate and kind of show you our techniques and what we're looking for and why we're doing what the guide coat's purpose is. So at the end of the day, this is just basically spray paint. Shake it up as usual and just, you know, from a good 10, 12 inches, just give it a nice coating. It's not rocket science. All right, so our tools of choice today are going to be the long block, always the long block. At least a short block, small. You want to block this out. You don't want to hand sand it, otherwise all you're going to end up with is smooth. You're not going to end up with straight. And then in this area here, it's concave, so I just have a wood dowel. I got a couple different sanding blocks that I use, but I actually just like this. It's a 1-inch wood dowel wrapped with paper. And then we're going to just come in here and work through this area with this because it's concave down here. This area is flat, so we're going to work off the body line up, and we're going to work across the whole thing together. We're not going to just stick to one spot here, because remember, we're not trying to sand all the block off of this. We are trying to, this is going to show us our imperfections, what needs to be repaired yet, and it'll make more sense here in a minute. But so I'm going to start this and then show you a couple minutes of it, and I'm going to put my respirator on and probably switch over time lapse and get it done. So what we're doing is we're working off the byline. Is a nice thing to do, get on it and just work diagonally across the whole system. Now I'm just working from this byline to this byline, but we're going to work the whole top at one section at a time. And again, so the block is what makes this happen, what makes it work. So I like to go one section one way, and then I'll turn around and come back the other way. So we're cross patterning our block marks, our sanding marks, and you can always already see this is. I mean, this is what it's telling us right off the bat. There's a dent right there. You can see I'm down to the primer there. The guide coat's gone, but right there it's not, and now I can feel that. So we're going to work across this whole thing. I can already see another one popping up down here. We're going to block it out and see how sometimes they come out, sometimes they don't. So I ran across the whole thing a couple times this direction. Now I'm going to work back across it the opposite direction. Same thing, back the other way. If you notice like lines with your paper, it's because the paper is plugged up. It gets a little section of buildup in it. Sometimes you got to scratch off your fingernail, which is rather irritating, but whatever. So we're working this with 180 grit right now, because this is going to get reprimed again. So we're going to 180 it out, and then we'll fix whatever we don't like with the skim coated glaze, and then we'll finish out with 320 again, and then reprime. All right, so now this section is pretty much done. That took, I don't know what, 3 minutes? Obviously the whole thing is probably gonna take me about 45 minutes, but this is what we got. So you can see here, this is, I'm gonna tell you what this is because you're looking at it through a camera, I get it. This is the epoxy primer coming through. So which means the metal's obviously right underneath of that. So down here, same thing. You can see we're breaking through the epoxy right here and right here. Okay, so we know we can't really go down any further. So as far as any black left, like this spot right here, that is low there. So that is a dent. That's what's telling us that's a low spot in the metal. We can't take the primer down any further. We're just going to hit metal. Once we hit this point, we know we need to bring this up. We can't take this down anymore. If we wanted to, yes, you can take your sanding block and you go down and you can dig that black out of there, but that is telling you, it's a guide code. It's guiding you that this is a dent and we need to fix that. And I'm surprised that that's really the only thing in this. Yeah, and I can feel right here, you can see the black right there. I can now feel there's just a slight low spot right there. And you can see high spot, low spot. So we can't go down anymore. We need to fill this with a little glaze, block that out with 180. We're not going to go at it with 80 grit anymore because we don't want those scratches in there. So we're going to glaze that, glaze this. This thing's going to need a lot of work. It was pretty rough to begin with. Like I said, it's in great shape, but it's 35 years old. So it's got 35 years of abuse on it. So now we're just going to set up a time lapse. I again am going to take my dowel, work this section. I am not going to work down in here because this was all nice, but I'm going to work this, the top area here, this face here, and this face here. Any flat surface I can get, we're going to block it out. Alright, so we got tailgate all blocked out, and at the end of the day, actually, it's actually pretty good. Show you a couple spots here. Obviously, we talked about this one right here. You can see how much texture is still in there, so that really tells you that it's a low spot. So basically, the guide code is going to show you where the problem is, and then it's up to you to decide what you want to do to resolve it. So your hand will tell you everything you need to know for the most part, but there is definitely a low spot right here we're going to fix. We're going to fix this spot here. We got something going on right here on this corner. You can see a lot of little pits there, a little pit there. And that's the nice thing about guide coat too, is it's gonna, if we just sanded this out without guide coat, you're not going to see the pinholes in the original bodywork and stuff. So that'll help bring those out. Other than that, just those two spots there. We got a couple spots on the face here. I don't even know if I'm going to worry about them. There's nothing real big. Everything feels good that way. As far as this section here, I'm just going to do a little glaze coat right here. We got some pinholes. Fix that. And then this was a problem before. I did some work on it right here, and this wasn't good enough, obviously. So we got to. It's not terribly low. It's almost not low here as much as it is high here. You can see how we went through to the epoxy again. We're trying to avoid going down to metal, because if we go down to metal, then we got to put epoxy on again. Right now, we can just, top coat it with fill primer again. but we're not going to. We're going to put a little more work into that area because, again, this is all covered by a big sticker. So it's just got to look good. And it's probably good enough now, but we're here. I'm going to fix that. Other than that, the bottom looks good enough. We did go through metal on the corners. We'll fix that. It also helps to know or remember where you did body work at. I remember up here, I did some work right on this corner. So I had to remember to go in and block that edge and side and make sure that edge is nice and clean and square, which it is, besides that low spot. We'll fix that. The hood, for the most part, is pretty good. Same thing. Got a little low spot right here. We're going to touch that up. A little low spot here we're going to touch up. This stuff here in the middle by this byline, it's hard to get in there and block that real nice, but it's nothing obvious. I got a couple spots here. You know, we did a lot of work on the front of this hood, so I was expecting to have some issues. The other thing about guide coat, so that showed us our flaws, but by doing this, when we did this door, I fixed a bunch of stuff on this door, like up by those mirrors and stuff. We had to weld all those holes shut and fill all that in and clean that up and straighten it. It's just a bunch of sucked. We got a little spot here, but over here, I knew something was going on, but I couldn't, you know, I could feel it in my hand, but I couldn't really make sense out of what was happening. So I DA'd the whole thing out and then primed it and then blocked it. And this is what the guide coat is telling me is, yes, there's obviously a dent right here. There's a high spot. You can see how it goes right down through there like that. I'm down to primer there, but guide coat here. So we got a dent here, a high spot here, and a low spot here. And that's why it was just throwing me off. We got everything going every which different direction in the low spot here. So it's low, 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 high, low. It's just not major, but I can feel it. So we're gonna do a little work here and a little work here, but this is all covered from here to here is all covered in a decal. So, and it's never gonna come off the truck. So we're just gonna put a little more effort into this. What we're worried about is up in this area here. So this section of the door is covered by a big piece of trim, but again, we wanna make sure that the edges are nice and clean because the trim doesn't cover the whole opening. But this area up here, this is where you're gonna see the waviness in the black. You know, this long straight panel, that's gonna go into the quarter panel. That is not covered by decal. So that is, we're putting most of our effort into this section and this section here. That's the bottom of the door. They're never perfectly straight anyways, but we want to make sure we get the major flaws out of it because I think this truck is getting lifted with probably, if I know Jamie, it's probably gonna have 35 or 37s on it. So it's gonna be up in your eye level now, and this is not so much. So every vehicle is different. You got to make your decision on how far you want to take it, how much time you want to spend in it. Painting, at the end of the day, is almost the easiest part, is the painting part. This is where you need to spend all your time, prep work. It's all about prep work. I've been working on this truck for like 2 months now, on and off, and I got probably a good 3 weeks to go yet. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna we'll get a little mud mixed up here. We're gonna use a glazing putty now, and I'll show you that here in a second. All right, so what we got here, this is the glaze that I use. This is made by a company called Evercoat. It's called the Z-Grip Glaze. It's basically just a really smooth putty. This is the same as most putties, basically just a nice puddle on a nice stream across it. 50-to-1 mixture, roughly. Do the math if you want. But again, don't stir it. Just work it until I get a nice consistent color. And today it's about 67 in here. The humidity's definitely up there a little bit, so we're gonna have to work quick. You don't want to mix more than this is probably too much. There's probably more than I need, and this is probably more than I'm going to be able to get on before it starts to set. So now we're just going to walk through and just look at all the areas that we didn't like. Just put a nice skim coat on. Look for anything we don't like. And we're not putting it on heavy because we don't need it. This is very low spots. 90% of it's coming back off again. Well, we got a lot of little pinholes in this section right here. Let's go get the tailgate done, actually. So I kind of went through and made my decision of what I want to fix and what I'm okay with. And that's the way it's going to be. Yep. And it's set up just like that. That was too much. I mean, it's a perfect day for body work. It's going to dry fast, but you're also going to be wasteful. All right, well, we're wrapping up the end of the day here. We, as we said, we went through, did a little skim coat of the metal glaze here on the spots that we talked about already. Everything came out pretty good. I'm happy with everything. We, let's see here, took some E-coat and just went through and touched up the couple areas that I broke through the metal at, so that's all protected. Now we basically blew everything off. We're going to tack it off, fire up the prep station. I got a cup of Omni MP282 mixed up, ready to go. So basically what we're going to do is we'll get a couple coats on where we did the main body work at. We'll get a couple coats on that first. We get a little build on it. And then we'll do 2 to 3 coats on everything. And then we'll get another coat of guide coat on it, and she'll be ready to sit and wait for paint. So that's going to wrap up our primer for the day. That was 3 coats of 282 and then 4 coats over top where we did a little bit of body work at, which wasn't much, and then 3 coats over all the panels together. And then we got a coat of guide coat on there. So basically at the end of the day, we're right back where we were 7 hours ago, because it looks the exact same. But it's part of the deal. That's why these things suck to do. Takes forever. So these are done. They're going to sit, like I said, they're in guide coats, so we'll block them out next week and get them ready for paint. Then tomorrow we're going to get the truck itself in. We've got 2 spots on the roof, the cowl section area, and then obviously this quarter panel that we were working on last week here. The rest of the truck is actually straight. We just need some primer up along the wheel wells and stuff. We did a lot of sand and a lot of rock chips down there, so that shouldn't be as bad as these parts. I wanted to get these ones done, the doors and the fenders, because they were the worst shape, and they're going to take the most amount of work. So we'll get the truck in tomorrow, get that part done, hopefully Friday, get it blocked out again, reprimed, and then that'll be ready for paint. And then we'll start wet sanding and cleaning and new filters, and it'll be a process, but we'll get to painting one of these days. So anyways, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys.